Thank you, Wout. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Wout, and also Bart to propose us that slot in the API community meetup. Yes, that's for us. Well, I've seen that we have 40 minutes to present, but don't worry, we'll try to make it faster because I think it's important for us to have a good Q&A timing. It's important for us to have your feedback. So we come with that presentation about our activities. Basically, it's split into two parts. I'm doing more the boring things with the introduction and the context setting, and then I give over the floor to Axel for the nicer and the more technical part of the story, which I think is more your focus. And I'm going to take back for some conclusion words before we go to the Q&A. So that was for the structure of the presentation. So the boring thing, like I said, the introduction, it's just three basic, common, classical parts. First, telling who we are and what we do, and then explaining a little bit more what is the link between the invoicing and API, or at least how we see that. And I finish briefly with some additional non-technical aspects that fit into the context of our story and are worth mentioning before diving into the technical side. Who we are? We are the BOSA DT in e-invoicing team. Our mission is, as I wrote, to stimulate the uptake of e-invoicing in Belgium, and we are very ambitious. We won't be happy before we get to 99.9% of e-invoicing. Just for information, the current figure lies at 16%, so there's still a lot of work to do to achieve the goal. Of course, we don't do that alone. I'll come back to that. It's quite important in all these presentation. We started in 2013. At that point in time, I was more or less alone doing that in a specific context of an OptiFect program, where we started with inbound invoicing pilot and B2G, business to government, in collaboration with different other public sector entities. And we are now good 8 years later, and what was the first pilot has evolved into some kind of multi-track program with a few names you may have heard about in the past, like Peppol, Mercurius, Hermes. Then we have also more and more policy initiative and communication initiative. We are 5 people involved in that program. Our architect Arnaud, Axel is our business analyst, that's the one I'm doing the presentation with. Guido is more the project guy and also taking care of the procurement aspects, which are quite important in all those administrative projects. And then we have a service manager, Mark, and myself. I'm doing the rest, I will say. The current focus that we have for the moment is still B2G. It's quite important to leverage, to maximize the leverage of the government uptake into this, but also we are already busy with B2B aspects, because the both are closely intertwined. You cannot really succeed in the B2G if you don't care about the B2B, or if you would do that, it would probably create other problems in the near future. And then I mentioned also that we are a part of the digital transformation DG. So it perfectly fits in the mission of our DG, because the uptake of e-invoicing is really quite a disrupting digital transformation for our socio-economic model. And this kind of disruptive evolution calls for support, but also policy. And that's a chance, because a BOSA, or a Federal Public Service, believed and understanding, it's really what we are doing. We're doing policy and support. So just to quickly move on to the question, the big question, what is the relationship between invoicing and API? well, I must confess that we are, in fact, yeah, but maybe I forgot something. Oh, okay, that's right. That's fine. I'm not the right. Do you see the slide with the API and the question mark?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And you've seen the who before? Yes?
Yes, Serge. I made sure
Okay.
to process
Thank
the
you,
slide.
Axel. I was a little bit. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, you've seen what you had to see. That's great. So now I'm going back to my slide. API, what's the relationship between invoicing and API? That's the main question we asked when Bart Hansen, my colleague, made us the pleasure to invite us to talk about that in this meetup. Uh, because we don't know, well, actually, we don't know anything about APIs. We are more concerned about interoperability, and for us, it was more. This meetup is more the opportunity to ask ourselves some question and to articulate the relationship. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Of course, if we are talking about the invoicing, we do a definition. What is invoicing? Is end-to-end, machine-to-machine invoice processing. And because we are speaking about automation of the flows, it goes without saying that there is some part of API in that story. Now, that's the definition of e-invoicing, but e-invoicing is not what we do. What we do is looking at ways to generalize e-invoicing. And if you generalize this, it means that you will integrate a lot of business systems together into as seamless possible way. And I want to add to that that this step is considered for a long time already like the most promising next step to the data economy, because data economy means that all these machines work together seamlessly. Otherwise, if it always depends on manual interaction, it does not fly, of course. And that step towards data economy also means questioning about the generalization of the use of our technologies, and not only the technical perfection of our technology. And that's a big challenge. And it goes without saying that when you start generalizing, then you will have more API and more API and more API to fit all the possible context and needs of the different stakeholders that need to interoperate. And at the end, it can become a mess, of course. That's really the point that we are concerned with. We are concerned with interoperability and make it succeed at the large scale. How do we approach that? Based on our experience on the pilot phase and the evolution, we have came across an interoperability framework called Peppol, which is actually the focus of this presentation, and that mainly sorts out all these aspects if it is properly understood and used. I will not go too much into the details here of Peppol, of course, otherwise it would take over the main part of the presentation. But just to summarize it, it is how can I say that, a framework, a set of rules and agreements and standards that revolve around a concept of four-corner model, and the identification of different layers. You have the document layers and the functional and the message layers. Document is more the business or the functional side. The messages is more about the connectivity aspects. Those two aspects play a very important role in this e-invoicing thing. Not only the e-invoicing thing, also the e-procurement thing. Maybe not only the e-procurement thing, but many other processes that could be dematerialized and automated end to end. Yeah, I'm finalizing very quickly here about the non-technical context. As I said, the focus is more on those two layers, the document and the message layers. But Peppol is not only about that. It also takes into account a lot of other aspects, and these aspects are taken into account because of the complex context. It's not only a technically complex context. In fact, the technical context is the easiest. The really complex thing is more around the technical. You have an historical perspective. Electronic invoicing is not from today. It's something that started in the 80s with the EDI, and that has grown organically. And there are standards, but there are also, how can I say, different application of those standards. It's a long journey. Yeah. Okay. I see that you are taking over the screen, so I will stop with the boring thing. I give you the words for the rest of the presentation, Axel. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Serge. And as Serge already said, I will elaborate on the technico-functional layers. I will highlight actually 3 so-called key ingredients to the machine-to-machine e-invoicing. I will be starting with the artisanal invoicing process, and I will gradually work towards explaining the four-corner model, the first ingredient. With the four-corner model, I will explain the concept of the common denominator principle, a kind of a common language, which is very important. And I will end with explaining the so-called discovery mechanism. We have here I try to indicate here the process of paper or PDF invoicing, which is considered artisanal. It is not machine-to-machine e-invoicing. It is not optimal. It's suboptimal. So this is considered a little bit, the old way of submitting invoices, albeit still fairly popular. The next slide is basically one step up, possibly. It's a different variant to email PDF. It's the XML electronic way of invoicing. I mentioned also it's still a bilateral way of exchanging invoices, whereby the sender on the left, whereby it's fairly complex to the sender. It needs to apply lots of rules, and it needs to know about all its receivers, how they want to receive their invoices. So it is a machine-to-machine way of invoicing, but very complex on the sender side. Next slide. This would be considered an ideal scenario, where we see the sender using only one format and one channel, and it's able to reach all of its receivers. However, that's not possible. It's a mission impossible. However, with the introduction of the four-corner model, there is some kind of a solution that that I will present. So this is the so-called first ingredient, the four-corner model, where the sender, where we introduce the concept of the service provider, the access point to the sender, where the sender chooses an access point which connects it to all participants on the network. The sender uses a custom channel to connect to its service provider or the access point. The next step is basically the access point, which will connect its users to the network and exchange and enable basically the exchange of so-called standards-based electronic documents. It's an e-delivery network, which uses a common and normalized channel. And to complete the picture, you will also have the access point to the receiver and the receiver. The Therefore, we can say that the access points connect users to the network and the exchange standards-based electronic documents. And the trading partners are able to exchange standards-based electronic documents over this four-corner model. And the documents we typically speak about within the invoicing context are e-orders, e-invoices, e-catalogs, message level responses, etc. It's important to note that the senders and the receivers are free to choose their preferred single access points, which basically provide, as I mentioned, a connection to all participants on the network. We introduced the concept, we talk about the four-corner model, the C1, C2, C3, C4. Those are the so-called four-corner models. And as I had mentioned before, the documents flow from C1 to C4 through this e-delivery network. Thereby, I have come to explain the four-corner model. The next key ingredient is the common denominator principle. In other words, a common language that the partners need to use to exchange documents. What we see is that very often the trading partners, the senders and receivers, speak different languages. This four-corner model allows for the use of a common denominator, a common language. In this example, you see here, sender is speaking. It's basically asking the receiver, okay, what language are you speaking? And the receiver says, well, I speak several languages, amongst one of them, the Globish. Sender responds, oh, well, I speak Danish, but I also speak Globish. So basically, it's the common language that that is a key principle of this four-corner model. To conclude, I will briefly touch upon the third ingredient, which is the discovery. And what does it consist of? The discovery, it consists of, on the one hand, the lookup, where the sender looks up if its receiver is able to receive or process the documents the sender wishes to send out to the receiver. So that's the lookup. On the other hand, it's very important for the receiver to publish the type of documents. It needs to declare or publish which documents it's able to receive or process. So this is to conclude this third ingredient, the discovery. Serge has mentioned already the Peppol, which stands for Pan-European Public Procurement Online. It's a kind of an application of the four-corner model, at least on the technical side. Of course, on this, he has also talked about the governance and the juridical context, which are very important aspects as well to this Peppol. It's a Peppol framework. So, but I will keep on talking about the more technical side, and hope with this one slide to kind of which introduces again the or repeats this four-corner, sender 1, corner 1, the access point to the sender, corner 2, 3, 4, and it basically shows that the Peppol access points connect the users to the Peppol network and exchange the electronic documents which I talked about earlier on Peppol specifications, Peppol BIS specifications. Again, the buyers, receivers, the senders, suppliers, they are free to choose their preferred single access points, which will connect them to all participants already on the network. We mention here, sign one agreement, connect to all, or connect once, connect to all. A few key rules for the sender receiver is, on the one hand, the sender will not send messages that are not compliant, and the receiver will not reject receiving messages which are compliant. So those are also two key principles of the Peppol framework. And through that way, we in a sense we have accomplished the mission impossible that we started the technical part of the presentation. I will conclude my part by introducing the concept of or the discussion of Mercurius, platform Mercurius, which is in a way the Belgian public sector approach to Peppol, and an illustration of a Peppol implementation. And with these two drawings here, I'm trying to demonstrate how Mercurius, which is the M, the white M on the green background, the little symbol, Mercurius functions actually as a mailing room to the public sector in a B2G e-invoicing world in Belgium. B meaning, of course, the private sector, and the G meaning the public sector. Again, to repeat, in case someone did not fully understand it, Mercurius functions here as a mailing room for the public sector in the B2G e-invoicing world in Belgium. It leverages, as I mentioned there, it leverages the critical mass of the public sector in order to promote the uptake of e-invoicing. Eventually, the goal is also that by doing that, B2B e-invoicing will also take place. And as a matter of fact, I believe Mercurius will also be able, that's the goal, be able to be used for B2B. One of its other possibilities is that it converts the push of Peppol to a pull, which is more usual for the public sector. It allows to share an important service, contributing to savings for the public sector. So by having this one service, instead of creating multiple different services, we have this one Mercurius service to which the public sector can use, and so it allows for substantial savings. And finally, Mercurius is also there to support many public entities in their own journey, as many still receive PDF today. So Mercurius allows for the conversion of XML invoices which come in through Peppol in the mailroom, and then it pushes out PDF invoices to certain entities of the public sector which are not able yet to process XMLs. So, and on the bottom part, it's not extremely clear, but there we see, it might be clear to all of you that we give some hints as to where there are interfaces between the different systems. We see the little rectangular squares, and those are APIs which are used. And so we see that there indeed are many within the context of Mercurius. So this is the end of my part. I hand over to Serge the word to make the conclusion, final conclusions.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Axel. Maybe just a small word back to here. Mercurius is not really expected to play a role in the B2B context. It's really the mailroom for the government, and it kind of completes the Peppol standards with some extension that are suited for both the technical context of the government entities who are used to use the Diensten integrators, the service integrators from the public sector. So it tunes the connectivity onto this expected factor at the end of the government. And secondly, it helps to leverage the government impact on the adoption by well, anticipating on the e-invoicing capabilities of the different entities, because we are talking about 5,500 entities, and they cannot all move at the same pace. So we need to buffer on that and show to the outside world that they are already at a certain step, and using this to stimulate the uptake. And I want also to go back to a small precision here about this. The common denominator principle, as Axel said, you discover, and it's more of the discovery part, but it's quite important to make really the distinction that it plays between the sender and the receiver. And well, basically, because there are so many possible couples, each time you need to make sure that you speak a common language. And of course, in the simple model, you only speak one language, but when there are so many languages available, and that's the case for the e-procurement, due to the evolution around, with the time, and due also to different functional and contextual needs. Then you first need to establish a common language during the communication. So that's the purpose here of this, is to always impose the support of a common denominator language, which is here denoted as Globish, because in the common world, in the real world, yeah, the people, what is their common denominator language? Most of the time it's Globish. And well, of course, if there is also a lot of local language that the two people share, okay, like the case here in the scenario one, then you will use well, in this case, it's Danish. So they use Danish to communicate. In the second scenario, there is no other common denominator language than the Globish. So that's the magic ingredient here, is to make sure that everybody has that common denominator language in his capabilities for sending and receiving. But it does not impede you to use other languages on that system. On the contrary, in the long run, there's probably a combination of different formats that cohabit into that Peppol interoperability framework. And it's not only the BIS that makes it all work. And that is also really the key point in this Peppol interoperability framework, is to allow that flexibility to the C1 and C4, to the sender and receiver. And that works with this discovery layer, where the receivers publish their receiving capability. That's the first step. And where the senders look up for the receiving capability of their receivers, based on indeed their business identifiers. I've seen in the chat a question about that. We'll come to that a little later in the Q&A session. So that was just a few extra clarification. I will go fast to the conclusion, because it's quite straightforward. So for us, it's pretty clear that the future is automating these flows. The more we can automate end-to-end, the better life we will have, because we won't need to be involved in all these administrative burden anymore. The machines will do that for us. The massive uptake of that paradigm creates, of course, adoption challenges, frictions between the different models, the different languages, the different channels, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to have a suitable governance framework to handle these aspects. And that's the case of Peppol, in fact. Peppol is a good example of that approach, governance-based approach of the problematic. in the context of procurement, there may be other governance framework for other contexts, or maybe Peppol can be expanded to other domains. It remains to be seen how that will all work together. And yes, Mercurius, as Axel said, is kind of complement of Peppol, because in the Belgian context and in the Belgian B2G context, it goes without saying that these additional factors, they keep playing, and it will be the same everywhere else, and the standards are not there to meet all these contextual factors. So you need to look at how you integrate these standards into your solution, but you always need to complement that. Yeah, I was clicking on the wrong button. Okay, a few clicks at the end of the presentation. Of course, you have a global click to the Peppol website. But then if you go more in the details, then you will probably be interested by the e-delivery network specification that govern the transmission sites and are the foundation of the four-corner model. The second layer of specifications is for the post-award, and e-invoicing belongs to post-award procurement. You have pre-award and post-award processes. In the post-award segment, you have different specification for the different sub-process like ordering, invoicing, dispatch advice, and so on and so forth. And the link here will lead you to all these business interoperability specifications, which is the name for that common denominator format that we have introduced today. And it's broken down into the billing part and into the other post-award processes for many reasons that I will not explain here. And then I added a link to the Belgian Peppol Authority page, and we are the Peppol Authority for Belgium at BOSA. That means that we stimulate the market at Belgian level to adopt Peppol, to think about that, to contribute to that, so that we can reach the goal that is in our mission. And the last link is more global link to the einvoice.belgium.be website, where we distill all kind of all-purpose information about e-invoicing. That was my presentation. To move to transition to the Q&A, maybe I just and to also have some kind of call for action to you guys. I was thinking about a few questions that would come into your mind. Do you deal with e-procurement, or do you have colleagues dealing with e-procurement, or do you think of other processes that would be in position to benefit from this kind of interoperability solution? Then we would really like to hear about that and see how we can help you. Thank you.
Thanks, Serge and Axel, for the great presentation. I saw a quite heavy debate in the chat between Christophe and Patrice. I will try to summarize where they seem to be going with their question. Why does the EU leave it open, and why do they allow different implementations? Because it's complexifying it for parties. Why don't they enforce a single API, basically a kind of then a single language that everybody needs to talk? Would that not be more simple? Or
we're in a free world. Huh? We work market driven, and especially Europe. So the solution is not to impose top down a single. So it's also quite complex, you know. So you can help, you can define standards, and that is what Europe has done. Huh? So when we are speaking about a common denominator format for the invoice, That is called the European Norm on e-invoicing, and that is a piece of work that has been financed by Europe. So that common denominator format is in fact a European standard. It's available, but can Europe make that mandatory? That's another question. There are plenty of other implementations that are working, and it's important to keep learning from all these complex contexts to find a common, suitable solution for the large public, because there is a lot of different sectors and interests and traditions, and it goes along with the generalization endeavor in all matters. You have to respect the way how the other are doing, even if it's more complex. Sometimes there are good reasons. I mean, sectoral formats have proven their efficiency for sectoral implementations, so you cannot get rid of that. In the contrary, you don't want to get rid of that. What you want is to complement with a cross-sector, cross-border format, that is that common denominator format. And then, yes, there are the way to find the right balance can be discussed for 20 years. Or the other solution is to find a framework that accommodates the different interests and make sure that the people use it properly. That is more the Peppol approach.
Yeah. So basically, trying to summarize it, the single API exists, but due to the free world, due to different industries, different habits, we also have various other APIs. That's a bit.
There are plenty of APIs, and they are there to stay. The thing is how to make all these API cohabit in an efficient way, and that's thanks to the four-corner model combined with the common denominator format approach and the discovery. Yes.
Looking at the other questions, and thanks for the answer. A couple of people would like to know more about the e-delivery network. If you could explain it a little bit more.
So the e-delivery network is a specification that allows the sender to use his own connectivity to an access point, and from the access point to the other access point, from the access point of the receiver, from the access point of the sender to the access point of the receiver, it's normalized. So it cannot be a custom channel. It must be a normalized, and there are specifications for this that need to be followed by the two access points. Well, of course, you have not two access points in total. You have just for the Peppol e-delivery network, you have more or less 400 access points who share the same specification, and as Axel said, they connect all, well, potentially all entities, all business entities together, thanks to that flexibility. Does it answer the question?
I think the question that the people ask, also looking at Patrice, his additional question, is this happening over the internet, and is it just security and means of communication that are standardized? It's not
Yes.
It's not over dedicated lines. It's just over the internet.
It's happening over it. Yeah, it's a VPN, I would say, or something like that. I'm not a specialist of that, but it's happening over the internet. Yes, with a secure connection between the access points. They have certificates. Each access point is identified through a certificate, and that creates the circle of trusts to interoperate and to have the confidence. And then you have a protocol stack. It's AS4 with a certain transport profile that is in fact the common denominator connectivity model. So even the access points, they can also add protocol stacks if it's suitable to their business. But the minimum is, again, the common denominator principle to be used here with the AS4 protocol stack.
And then an additional question on that, is that free of charge, or do participants in that e-delivery network have to pay a subscription fee?
So that's the financing. So the model works, well, everybody pays its own part, but there is a coordination entity called Open Peppol, and this one, of course, needs to be financed. And there is a financing model that is mainly based on the access points. The access points, they pay a contribution to Open Peppol, and based on that, they participate to the e-delivery network. And then they commercialize their services to the senders and the receivers of the world.
Yes, so basically the access points then have a commercial offer to interested senders or interested receivers.
Yes. And that goes without saying that the model offers the flexibility of the to the senders and the receivers. That flexibility comes with a price.
Yes, and there, Patrice, I see your comment of that's not very free market, but I think it's the free market because everybody can participate. They just cannot participate for free, but still everybody can participate.
Exactly. Of course, even a sender can implement, or a sender receiver can implement his own access point for the sending and the receiving, and in that case, he will pay a fee to Open Peppol to contribute to the financing of that coordination entity that cannot work for free, and there is no free lunch. But of course, that's a very minimal fee for a basic entity. It's about 2,000 euro per year. So it's not really, if you are a big entity exchanging a lot of documents, it's not an abnormal implementation. On the other hand, the professionalization of the carriers and the service providers calls for more and more access points and service providers and a specialization of that line of business.
Okay, thanks. Just quickly going through the chat, I think I tackled everybody's questions. For the people in the call, if you still have questions, you can still push them. We still have a couple of minutes. Okay.
Well, maybe just
Serge.
what I can say about the delivery, you will have more information with the clicks, of course, and also the common denominator language. All these things are exposed in more details on these pages.